Hello and welcome to another Manufacturers Cup commentary with my qualifying lap to start with. Coming into qualifying, you want to always get a good run out of the final corner just to have the best start. I braked a little early to turn 1, used as much of the curb in turn 2 to open up the corner. The McLaren's not the best at cornering, so you need to use the curb in turn 3 to try to pull it round a little bit to keep up as much speed as possible. Braking a little bit early here again, just try to get the car turned in. You don't want to run wide here, it's the easiest way to lose three tenths. I don't really have a good brake marker here, so I use a bit on the track, but try to turn in, keep it fairly tight and keep the speed up. Again, I don't really have any good brake markers here, so it's just basically off feeling. I'm a bit slow in this corner, I don't quite go on the power as early as I could have done. But here, brake, turn in, keep as tight as possible, get on the power as early as possible. Short shift into this corner to try to get the car to turn in, and you don't get as much wheel spin, so reduce the chance of spinning. And now try to get as good an exit out of the final corner as possible, and I can use the McLaren's power to gain back a couple of tenths what I might have lost through the middle sector. So generally not a bad lap here, as only a couple of hundredths off my best time in general. Alright, now getting into the race. As you can see, I go through my usual rituals of moving the fuel settings around, just in the vain attempt to save just what little bit you can. But as soon as the race starts, I'll be back into fuel mix 1, and I'm starting on the harder tyre here, so I'm going to be pitting at the end of lap 1 because you want to get rid of the tyres as soon as possible. So goal here, just take it easy through this first lap, but try not to drop too far behind. You can see me short shifting a bit while I have the slipstream just to save that little bit extra fuel. I get a bit squirrely on the curb there. I'm going to switch to the TV cam for this first part of the race, because as you can see, struggling to keep up with the few people in front. A lot of them are on medium tyres just in front of me, and there's some medium tyre runners just behind me as well, so I'm kind of like the cork in the bottle at this point. And luckily Jackster was actually very clean, staying right behind me here. He didn't take any serious lunges when a lot of people probably would have done, so, but that did cause a bit of chaos behind. So he just wasn't quite close enough to go for the full lunge, but he was close enough that I was definitely in the way. As you can see, he's right on my tail through this final corner. But as I said, I'm always going to be pitting after this first lap, getting rid of the hard tyre. And there's one person behind that follows me in. So I switch onto the medium tyre now. And again, unlike a lot of people, I'm only running 1 lap on the medium tyre. There's quite a few people who have been running like 3 or 4 laps, doing the 3 stop. But I just want to get rid of these tyres as soon as possible, because in practice I worked out that even on lap 9, on the soft tyre, my times were about equal with what I was doing on the medium tyre. I was really struggling on it for some reason. So it's another lap. I just want to get rid of this tyre, and then I can start the main portion of my race. It's the Ford just behind me that used the same strategy. He moved onto the medium tyre, and I was actually surprised I was pulling away a little bit here. It's only a couple of tenths, but you know, the gap was opening up. You can hear the Mazda just going through the shot just then. It's got a very Formula 1 style sound to it with its rotary engine. And here's me just peeling off into the pits again. Yeah, I think my actual point of view footage and replay footage are a couple of frames out of sync a little bit. I noticed after finalizing those. But I'm gonna actually skip forward straight to lap 8 because I pretty much run on my own through that section, so it's just me putting laps, and this is where people finally start coming out of the pits just in front of me. So I run a little bit wide through that corner, not wanting to get too close to Jackster, but then I have Leonidas alongside me. So I take this corner fairly well, but the BMW pushes Leonidas out of the way. Leonidas gets a penalty for it, and then the BMW then runs straight into me. So he's given us both a penalty within 2 corners. And then look, I think Leonidas was a bit annoyed, so he starts taking lunges and they start fighting. So luckily for me, I'm able to open up a bit of a gap here and only get the 1 second penalty, because seeing what was happening behind me afterwards, it was yeah, not the best driving from both of them, to be honest. There was a lot of ramming and running off track, and there was a collateral damage from other people as well who didn't really deserve it. But yeah, at the time I didn't actually know Leonidas had a 1 second penalty. I thought it was just a half second, so I was actually kind of worried at this point that I'd, you know, have 2 people running at me into this corner. So I think in total I lost about 4 seconds just because the one incident with me being run into, which actually plays a big part later down in the race, because those 4 seconds could have really helped me on later on. But again, you can see the 2 behind me, they're fighting, and they can see them both off track. So they have dirty tyres at this point. Can't really see it at this point, but Nisman goes for an overtake on the BMW and then just gets completely wiped out into the final corner. Is completely uncalled for, and that ruined Nisman's race. As you can see, with people pitting, I'm actually gaining a few positions at this point. I still have 1 more stop to do, and a lot of other people still still need to make the stop because they'll be coming in for the hard tyre at this point if they're doing the 2-stop and then getting rid of it and then going on to the soft. Or if they started on soft doing hard tyre then going to medium. Whereas I still have the soft to run, and with less fuel I should be faster in the second soft stint than I was in the first. See, in general, I kept the majority of my run fairly smooth. I was actually running at a fairly good pace compared to what I had been doing, which is surprising, to be honest. I was on a really good run throughout this whole race. Yes, I did a bit of brake bias testing, and I ended up moving my brake bias all the way back to the rear to try to save the fronts as much as possible. But nothing much happened in that lap, so skip forward to the next lap and where I come for my final stop. And compared to a lot of people, I did fairly good fuel saving, even though I was pushing relatively hard on it as well. Through the middle sector I would change to fuel map 2 just so I could get better traction. It helps to save the rears as well because you're not putting as much power into the rears. As you can see, Nisman got taken out before. I rejoined right in front of him, and with his time loss he would have been fighting for the win very likely, but as it stands he's right behind me and I know he's faster. So I know he's going to close up on me even if I have fresher tyres, so this is always going to be a tough race from this point on. My main thoughts at this point are, right, I know I'm going to have trouble from behind, but if I can just keep up a relatively fast pace in the middle sector, he's not going to be able to overtake me down the main straight, because even in a slipstream the McLaren pulls away from the 911. As you see, he gets a better run through the final corner, the gap comes down, but then as the straight goes on the gap just starts increasing again. So if I can get good exits out of the final corner, he shouldn't really get close enough to have a run at me, which would get frustrating for him, I would guess. Using as much of the track as I can here just to try to keep the speed up. Braking fairly late, using the curb, open the track up, don't run too wide again. Stay a bit tighter in this corner than a lot of people. Switch to the fuel map 2. It's one thing I had to keep remembering to do. It's like I got more used to it through repetition, changing the fuel map, but it's not something I'm the best at, especially with a control pad, because you can move to change the map, but that means you're not steering while you're doing that, so you have to be very quick with it. So it's why I got used to changing the fuel map here, because you get on the power, quickly switch, and then you're ready to turn into this corner. On the brakes, try to open the corner, try to get on the power as early as possible. Again, not the best run. Nisman closes up behind me again, but then as we reach the later part of the straights, the gap just gradually starts opening up again. I'm still worried. I'm still thinking about tyre saving here. I'm not wanting to run the tyres too hard because I want them to last until the end. Because running the 9 soft stints is more than a lot of people were running. I mean, in the higher splits, you could see people run longer than that, but those guys are a lot better than I am, to be honest. And they're generally running better cars on tyres than I am. So I'm having to purposely increase my rear wear to try to save the fronts. As you see, taking a nice smooth line. I was actually fairly good out of that corner in comparison to this man. But each lap, even as long as I kept this man behind, I could see the gap to the group in front just coming down. So I was just wanting to, the moment I got the slipstream, I kind of knew I was safe from being attacked from behind, because I would pull the gap even more on the straights. But my goal is to try to be as consistent as possible. I don't want to wear the tyres out, but I want to be fast enough to keep him behind. It's kind of noticeable at this point, the gap coming down to the people in front. A lot of these people, I said, started on the medium tyre and have been running the soft for a little bit longer than I have, or they started on the soft and are now running the medium. So I should have a tyre advantage over a lot of the people in front of me at the moment. And there will still be a few more that need to pit as well, so there will be people who haven't taken the hard tyre at this point. Get a bit slidey there and not the best exit. So I lose a couple of tenths that I just gained through the middle sector. But I do have the slipstream though, so I gain basically all of that back down this straight. Only thing is, now we're getting the slipstream, that I have to worry about hitting my braking markers a lot better, 'cause I can't brake as late as I was doing. And plus then you have a little bit of a dirty air effect, so the car won't turn in quite as well. So, and I've been doing a lot of running on my own, so the slipstream practice wasn't really as up to scratch as a lot of people might have been in the same situation. But kind of unknowingly, me moving the brake bias back to +5 probably helped out with the slipstream running. So I was already, you know, like I mentioned before, trying to wear the rear tyres more to save the fronts. So I had a better balance in this car. So the McLaren F1 understeers a lot generally anyway, so keeping a slight oversteer balance on it with the tyre wear actually helped, you know, once the understeer from the dirty air kicked in. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this well enough. It makes sense to me in my head at the moment. But close right up, I get into the slipstream. Jackster actually indicates to say go past here, but I wasn't sure if I was close enough to make a lunge, but I think he lifts into the braking point. So I take the position nice and steadily. Again, try to use as much of the track as possible. And then my goal now is on to the next person. I'm just inside slipstream range, so I'm still being pulled forward. Still taking that nice tight line through the corner, then using the curb on the exit, using as much curb on that corner as possible. I ran a little bit deep there, but still managed to get the car turned in enough to get on the power fairly early. And through that middle sector, Nisman also got past Jackster, so he's back on my tail again. Now having the slipstream, you can see the gap just open up. It's visibly bigger just because of how much more powerful the F1 is than the 911, especially with the slipstream. And the only worry I had at this point was that the car in front had the slipstream as well, so making an overtake wouldn't be as easy into turn one, which is where I was thinking the move was going to happen, because, like I said, the McLaren being such a strong car in a straight line and then having the slipstream is generally where you're going to go from the longest straight into one of the main braking points. But with him having the slipstream too, it kind of makes that a little bit more tricky. So I need to get a good exit out this final corner. To be fair, I didn't have the best exit there. I spun the rears up a little bit, but I think he had a bit of a problem. I think he short shifted a bit too much, and he lost a bit of power coming up the hill. So I'm able to get in a position. And I make a bit of a lunge, but I get it stopped perfectly on the apex, and it's a nice clean move there. I put myself a bit out of position for the later part of the center S's, but so I have him right back on my tail again. But luckily I have the slipstream ahead again, so it's the main reason I'm able to defend. Because at this point, anyone on the medium tyres would probably be a lot more equal with my worn softs at this point, considering how long I'd been on them. So I'm struggling to close the gap on the Audi R8 in front of me at the moment. It's coming down marginally, but not as fast as I want it to be. Now heading up the hill, ready to start the final lap. As you see with the slipstream, the gap's coming down, but at this point my tyres are a bit second hand. I brake a bit too late, I lose the rear, just slide. That cost me a load of time there, and that also put me out of position for parts 2 and 3 of the center S. And so even though I still have the slipstream and I'm safe from behind, I just lost a lot of time. I could have been right on his bumper at this point. Again, I'm struggling on the tyres. I'm a bit slow through the corners. I think once you start having one big slide, then you start psychologically worrying about tyres more, and it generally happens more. I think I suffer with that a lot. It's like as soon as I start feeling tyre wear, it's like I start struggling more and more as the race goes on. If you notice, my pace just on the right hand side there was very consistent. It was basically all 30.9s up to 31.1s. It was, you know, all very close together. And then it starts gradually dropping off at the end of the stint, but it wasn't by much, and then this final lap was the only one that went up into the 32s. As you can see, I'm quite a long way back here, but just the slipstream and the McLaren's powers, you can see the gap just dropping. And this is where that 4 seconds comes into play that I lost earlier in the race. 4 seconds would have put me right in the fight with 5th place. So I would have been racing for some fairly good points there. Just generally I was happy to be racing and competitive at all here. It says 199 points there, but it actually gets rounded up to 200.